Welcome back to another episode of the Choose954 Podcast, episode 125, with Oscar Fuentes, aka the Biscayne Poet, here from our Zero Empty Spaces location in the Dakota, the Design Center of the Americas, Dania Beach, ahead of him sharing his thought-provoking, relatable, inspiring story as part of our CreativeZen Talk series in August, which we'll get to. If you didn't know about Choose954, myself, Evan Snow, and my business partner, Andrew Martineau, started the social movement to cultivate culture and community here in Broward in an effort to keep people in the know with all the great things going on, make this a better place to live, not just a better place to vacation. The point of the podcast is to connect you with interesting people like him that do important things in the community, and you're in for quite a treat. So without much further ado, for those that are not familiar with you, who is Oscar Fuentes beyond the Biscayne Poet, beyond the books, beyond the typewriter, and beyond the public version people may already know?
Thank you for having me. Thank you. And thank you for that question. So I am a person who has spent his life paying attention. At the core, the typewriter, the microphone, the classic car, the jazz trio, and my work at the library as an art curator are all tools. They're extensions of my purpose. My purpose being to pay attention so that others can feel seen. And at the core of that, I'm a husband, a father, a son, a community resident who is involved and connected to people that I know, to people that I don't know, and that become partners and collaborators in so many ways. And that's it. That's who I am. That's trying to, an artist that is trying to help others feel seen by just paying attention.
It's seems so simple, but it shouldn't be overstated in this current state of the world that we live in, where your attention is on demand from so many different, devices and people and things. And art has the power, amongst many other things, to help us slow down, help us focus and pay attention. And thankfully, poetry is one of those art forms. And I was just so amazed when I reconnected with you at Stella's Wild Bloom Poetry, having the jazz trio, having this platform for local, emerging, and established poets to be able to share really moved me in a way that, I love slam poetry, I love spoken word poetry, I love all forms of poetry and art form, but it just really was like, wow, I really need to, we had connected many, many years ago, but to reconnect with you, and then I wanted to learn more about your story beyond the little bit that I already knew, and then ideally share with our community here through the podcast and then CreativeZen Talk, that we'll get into. So I really do appreciate that, and I'm excited to dive in a little bit further. So before poetry became part of your identity, tell us a little bit about your story, like what shaped you, challenged you, and helped you form the person ultimately behind the work.
So I grew up with the loving example of immigrant working parents, who taught me that love is built on sacrifice, through sacrifice, and stopping and pausing, paying attention to each other, listening, and being present and asking, "Are you okay?" Which is what they did for me. Before they even questioned anything that they might have questioned, that I might have been doing as a teenager, they paused and they asked, "What can we help you? How can we help you with? What do you need from us?" not what are you doing, what's the matter, and so that taught me also, it just made me it when I became a dad, it was just an instinct that I already had, to pay attention and be there for my kids the way that my parents were there for me, and that transferred onto my friends, to my community, to my professional work at the library, um, and yeah. So before I called myself a poet, so I was simply looking at the world. I was looking at the world and trying to see how I fit in. And I think fitting in is an interesting thing to say because my parents never spoke English fully, right? So we spoke Spanish at the house all the time. So much so that I took ESOL classes in elementary school. Um, so English was my second language, um, and I was so self I guess a little insecure about my accent and my height and my origins and Hispanic, that in middle school I discovered the art of the art of self-expression through drama. So I was in the drama club,
Oh, nice.
and I became the best mime in the room because I felt really insecure about my accent. So there I was, touching invisible walls, creating, like, doing storytelling without and that shaped me in so many ways, because I ended up actually becoming I won an award, Best of Florida, among the middle schools and high schools, and that was really interesting, I was able to talk with my body,
Interesting.
and today when I perform, with my jazz group, or when I perform, I memorize my poetry. I'm a very physical performer, and in so many ways, that's who I was, who I became, and who I overcame before I started calling myself a poet.
It's interesting that you have the face of a mime.
Yeah, yeah. Right now you see it, right?
Right?
Now you see it, and I mean it helps with my parenting skills. Like my kids are like captivated because I'm such an animated person when it comes to them. And my dad was the same. My dad was, a very energetic, dramatic storyteller. You know, that would tell his own stories and adventures of his teenage years, and he would add all these fantastical characters, that we, like my siblings and I, ended up believing for a while, until later we're like, wait a minute, my dad did not wrestle an alligator. That scar is not from a bite of a shark. But in one of my books that I recently dedicated to him, titled Relics of the Heart, it's a book, that I dedicated to my dad, to his storytelling, and so stories of my family, with a little bit of extra fantasy in it, in honor of the storyteller that he was.
Storyteller genes were passed down into your
Completely.
DNA 100%.
Completely.
And they were from Honduras.
Yep.
Were you born in Honduras or here?
I was born in New York,
Okay.
in Manhattan, 1975.
Okay.
And a few months after I was born, I had some kind of a lung infection, and my immigrant illegal parents had to take me to the hospital, and then when my mother, they wouldn't let her stay overnight, and when she went to see me the following day, my hand was wrapped. Apparently, the nurse had injected a IV on the skin and not on the vein, and it had burnt my skin. So I still have the scar over here, and my mom always told me, "Don't worry about that. As you get taller, it'll hide. It'll like stretch your body." Here I am, 5 feet, 5 feet 4 inches, 5 feet 5 inches, I think. And but these are it's a representation of that time and the struggles of an immigrant parent.
Amen. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
So much of your creative life then after coming down here was built in Miami, which is obviously part of your identity, hence the Biscayne Poet. How have family, culture, memory, and place shaped the voice that you've developed now over the years?
So my family gave me my values. Miami allowed me to be creative and imaginative. And my parents taught me about hard work and resilience. And my poetry kind of dances somewhere in between, those two worlds. And I think the same way a music producer produces music from a closet or a bathroom, and it's like fantastical music, the same way I approach my writing. I'm going to create my own path as a writer, write my own residencies, pitch them, and see what happens. And I did. And, I self-produced poetic collections, bodies of work, after, pitching a poets in residence program to the Vagabond Hotel, to the One Hotel in Miami Beach. And they trusted my work, and they gave me a shot. And I was able to produce these works, and a number of collaborations that came from those particular works of work. The Miami Book Fair became a very strong partner in my work. Always creating opportunities for me to present and introduce others, right, to my passion for poetry and for typewriter poetry and performance. So I think it's like fishing, right? If you don't throw your line and you don't like move it every now and then, and I'm here, hey, I'm here, nothing will bite. And I think that the same thing can be said about opportunities and what we create for ourselves, how we envision what we want and how we go after it. And then I think if we don't envision it, I think we need to envision it, like really put ourselves there in the future of what we want, so that when we go look for it, it's there waiting for us.
Right. Some people call it manifesting, affirmations, journaling, visualization, whatever it may be. But right, that's an interesting comparison. And if you don't cast that line, then you're not gonna catch a fish.
Yeah.
And I know it's everybody has their own unique journey. Some are more challenging, some are easier. I know you've been in the game, a long time. How long have you been at, doing poetry?
It's gonna be about 25 years now. I mean, my son is already 26. I was doing poetry way before he was born, so a little over 30 years. Professionally, to the point where, okay, this is something that's bigger than me, right? And I can create a community, right? So that for the past 20 years, it's been streamlined.
Wow, and just to think about how much this place has changed over that time. Was there a moment when poetry stopped being something you did and became something you felt called to live, share, and serve through?
Yes. So when, in my poetry performance of writing for others, when people started seeing themselves in the poetry I was writing, that's when I realized that my poetry was no longer about my self-expression, but it was about helping others see themselves in the poetry, and validate who they were, right? So it became about that person in front of me, rather than I'm just gonna write a poem, So yeah, poetry became an act of service at that point. When people started, started seeing themselves in the poems I was writing.
Which is such a intimate moment, especially you're going to an event where how we connected. We were just reflecting before this at CIC Miami. It was in January 2017. I think it was like Miami Land was the title of the event or something like that. And I had no idea what to expect. I knew that there was like a bunch of activations or installations or interactive components. But yeah, then to see you sitting there with the typewriter and like see a line forming and see people like waiting, I was like, "Why? What is this? Like, what's going on here?" And I had never seen, and I was relatively new to the arts at that time, and just to be seen, which is something, admittedly, I struggle with to a certain extent with dating and romantic relationships, or even to be seen for my value and my worth. But for you to see me as a stranger, and then with your process, with your format, which we'll get into, to honor me, to have me feel really alive from just that brief moment in interaction, it left a lasting memory on me. And then obviously we connected and reconnected, and then that led to having you come to the opening party VIP reception for Art Fort Lauderdale, the Art Fair on the Water we used to do before COVID in 2019 at Pier 66, where I think you performed for like 300 people, give or take.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. So you're right. You never know what these collaborations will lead to. I'm going to just mix up one of these questions here. For those that are not familiar with what we're referring to, your live typewriter poetry creates these intimate one-on-one moments with strangers. Maybe just for those that are not familiar, tell us just a little bit about that. And after writing so many poems for people in real time, what have those encounters taught you about what people are really carrying?
It's taught me a lot, It's taught me that we're not that different, that we're all the same.
Amen.
And that to write a poem for you is to put myself in your shoes, and and try to like put myself in your shoes, and then write that poem, the poem that I need, that you need, right? But I learned that people are carrying love, grief, and hope all at once. And to read a poem, to be able to see the story they are not telling me in those 3 words, and to pay attention to the person in front of me, how they move, what they're wearing, what they're saying to their friends, what they're not saying to their friends, their body language. I'm paying attention to all of that while I'm writing that poem and using those 3 words.
And for those that are not familiar with the 3 words, what is the when you're in this container, when you're performing?
Yeah, so basically, you see me with my vintage typewriter, and I have a sign that says name plus 3 words equals a poem. And those 3 words are pretty much words that describe how you feel or how you want to feel. Mind you, there's a lot of poets across the country that do typewriter poetry, and they all have different prompts. I think the way that I'm connecting with my community, this is the way, asking them for 3 words that describe them, how they feel or how they want to feel, because most people don't talk about how they want to feel, a lot of people are humble to the point where they don't want to tell you how I want to feel. Like it's let's put others in front of, let's ask others before, so we put others in front of ourselves instead of putting us first. which is a righteous thing to do also.
Sure.
But it's also righteous and important to ask what is it that I deserve today, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And to be seen, to be validated is also a healing process, you know, it's part of the healing process. And the healing process, and we talk about the healing process a lot, and which is becoming a little cliche, you know, but it's never ending. It's just like that process of becoming. You know, we are a poem as well, you know, we are a poem being written, you know, and the poem is a beautiful feeling, right? And to be beautified within, like, what is it that beautifies us and turns us into a light, you know? Love for ourselves, love for others, to see ourselves in others is to become the light, right? Which also is the title of my new book, Geography of Light, you know? Geography of Light, about the, you know, emotional landscapes that we carry within, the coordinates that define us, that tell us where to go without a GPS. We just know where to go. We just know what to do. Like, we know to do like, all of us carry that within, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know the right thing. You know, Spike Lee, do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to do the right thing. And that's that geography of relationships, that emotional landscape, the compass that we carry within, that we just know what to do and where to go and how to do it, you know, because either we've seen it through strong examples in our lives, or we've learned it through our life path.
And it was passed down to us inherently in our DNA, and like, somehow, when we were hunter-gatherers, and before that, when there was no language and there was no GPS and there was no Google or ChatGPT, somehow we were guided to find food, to reproduce, to ultimately love,
To take care of others,
to the point that now we have 9 billion people on this planet.
to form families.
Correct.
To adopt families,
Correct.
family members. I mean, that's a natural.
That is ingrained in our DNA over millions and millions of years now. And it's unfortunate that, as we kind of were saying before, with all of the noise in the world, we're kind of like losing sight of that. And it's unfortunate now that people are not feeling loved, and also in not only certain parts of the world, in all of the world, but in certain parts of the world more than others, people are not having babies and not having families.
Yeah.
And I think, as an arts advocate, if we can find ways to maybe slow down by engaging with various forms of art, if for some people it could be painting, for some people it could be poetry, that will kind of remind us of the light that we have inside of us.
Yeah.
And that North Star, and that we're right, we are all that much more alike than we are different. And it's so crazy how the arts have the ability and the power. And I know I'm not like selling drugs here. Like, we're selling like the stuff that I think we all know, but people just, it's so crazy. Like, why are we cutting art funding? Why do people not go out and patronize the arts when we know it has the ability to do all these things?
Yeah, you know, it's also a matter of showing up, right? I mean, we show up for ourselves because we care about, you know, our, you know, the growing version, this version of ourselves that keeps evolving, right? So we show up for ourselves, you know, we show up for our friends, we show up for our family members, we show up for our community, we show up. I think showing up and being present, you know, I make the argument in my new book, Geography of Light, that permanence is an illusion, and that being present is always a choice. So to show up for yourself is a choice. What am I doing for myself today? You know, I'm going to go for a jog. I'm going to go for a walk. You know, I'm going to, whatever it is that that represents showing up for yourself, do it. You know, check in. Hey, how are you? Haven't heard from you in a while. Let's grab a coffee, you know? Oh, guess what? I don't drink, but let's have a tea. Let's go for a walk. Showing up for yourself, reminding what is it that this version, this evolving version of myself needs today, so I mean, we're still going to go to bed at night with our contradictions, but we're going to wake up again the next day, knowing that we're on that path.
Amen.
You know, and it's okay, right? It's okay to contradict ourselves, right? Human error is important, you know, because it humanizes us, right? It reminds us who we are, you know. But to be reminded of this path that we're on, you know, to show up for ourselves, for others, you know, to show up for this version of us, this future version of us that's waiting for us, and to visualize that me, you know, and over there at the front, arms open, here, I'm waiting for you, you know. That, I think, is an emotional.
And there are no perfect people. One of the best quotes that has always stuck with me from one of these talks, and you just triggered it, and I haven't said it in a while, so I'm glad that you brought it up. One of the most important things you can do is show up to other people's stuff. It was Tim Hass, the founder of General Provision, and he said that in 2016, and it really stuck with me, because you could be doing the greatest work, be producing the greatest poetry, painting, whatever, but if nobody shows up to appreciate it, to patronize it, purchase, support, whatever, you're not going to continue. I mean, you might continue doing it for yourself in private, but to show up for other people's stuff, that's how we build community. That's how we spread awareness. That's how we spread the mission, the gospel, the message, and all of that. So I appreciate you, you know, highlighting that. And now that we've highlighted that, for those that are not familiar with what we're highlighting and previewing here, I'm so grateful that you accepted the invitation to share your thought-provoking, relatable, inspiring story at our monthly breakfast lecture series, little mini TED Talk called CreativeZen Talks that we just celebrated 8 years of, which is where I received some inspiration in the form of my aha moment that changed the course of my life, my world, my community. So I continue to pay it back and pay it forward and host these events, bringing in local people to share their thought-provoking, relatable, inspiring story, because you never know who's going to be sitting there in the audience also yearning for some inspiration that could change the course of their life or their world or their community from whatever their thing or their calling is. So Oscar is going to share, we're taking off July because I'm going for a long overdue vacation and wedding in Colombia. But we do this every second Friday morning of the month. So I believe it'll be August the 14th. It's a free event. We host it here at our Zero Empty Spaces location at the Dakota in Dania Beach. Coffee, free guided sound healing, meditation to help everybody to get a grounded state. And you get to hear more beyond what we're kind of just previewing here. We'll link the RSVP in the event description. It'll be on social media, all that good stuff.
I'm so excited for that. I'm really excited for that.
I'm really humbled and grateful that you accepted. And I frame it as like a mini TED Talk. I would have just assumed, and I mean, you undoubtedly are very humble and grounded and down to earth, but I just would have assumed you would have already done, you know, TED Talks and Creative Morning Talks, but I haven't done a TED Talk either. So like, it's not, you know, not everybody gets those opportunities. So when I made the invitation and you were like, you know, yes, and this is something I wanted to do and humbled to be invited for.
Yes.
I'm grateful that you graciously accepted.
I am your mirror. You're seeing yourself in me right now. I feel the same. Yeah.
And big thank you to former speaker Stella Amador, Wild Bloom Poetry.
Yes.
Bloom by Stella.
Yes.
Shout out. Big shout out to Stella. And it's crazy that, she hosts them on Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. So she hosts a poetry open mic event at Emily's Garden in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And I have my Conscious Weekly Men's Circle group on Wednesdays that I've been doing for the last 4 years. So I never could attend. And then when she did I think it was the 6-month anniversary event, she did it on a Friday. And then you were the headliner. And I was fortunately able to attend. And then we reconnected. And then I was like, oh man, I'm just so moved. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, Stella does it on the third Wednesdays, right?
Yeah.
And I'll do a little plug here. I do my poetry program on the third Thursday of every month at Books and Books in Coconut Grove, 6:30 p.m. So if you're a writer, a performance artist that uses poetry as a vehicle, you're welcome to stop by. Even if you are just a poetry lover that just wants to listen, it's a space where poets come and read. Very intimate space at second floor of Books and Books in Coconut Grove, and we're there every third Thursday.
And you've been doing that one for
I've been doing that for the past 3 years. I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, 3-4 years. The next one is July 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other ongoing annual monthly events?
Yeah. Well, that I do, or
Yeah.
well, so yeah, every week I have a poet in residence program at the One Hotel in Miami Beach, and I'm there every week, every Saturday, most Saturdays, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I'm there in the lobby with my typewriter, typing personalized poems for anyone who's in the lobby. And I've been doing that since before the pandemic. So I want to say we're going on 7 years with this residency at the One Hotel South Beach.
Which I've heard great things of, because my friend, teacher, yoga coach, guru, Chloe Ravel, the Gemini Rising,
Yes.
said one of her most memorable events was with you at the One Hotel.
Oh, that's amazing.
Pre-pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I strongly encourage people to check that out. So now that we've got a little background and context, now that people are going to know you a little bit, I think people have probably seen you or know you, the hat, the typewriter, but maybe they don't know, what does the Biscayne Poet mean to you now? Not just as a creative name, but as a responsibility to Miami, its stories, and its people.
Well, the Biscayne Poet has come to mean something that represents something bigger than me, right? The Biscayne Poet was a name that I was baptized with by my friends, who would introduce me at the local poetry event. And then one day, a friend of mine says, "Put your hands together for the Biscayne Poet, Oscar Fuentes." And it stuck, So the name now belongs to the community that gave me the name, more than to me. And, so I feel a sense of responsibility to tell stories, to really bring back those neighborhoods that are slowly disappearing. Because there's a version of me, again, going back to this version of us, there's a version of me that belonged to those neighborhoods, So to write about my experiences is to bring back that environment, to tell those stories that are not told, to bring back those characters that we're all familiar with, right? Biscayne Boulevard, the neon lights, the Mimo architecture style, the Art Deco style, those voices, that music, that grime, stories. These stories shaped me while I was going through my own thing as well. So I was growing up in Miami.
Where about?
Well, the downtown area, the Biscayne Boulevard area. I mean, I grew up off of Coral Way and 33rd Street, 33rd Avenue. Yeah, 33rd Avenue. And but as a young adult, I was on the Biscayne area. Biscayne and 31st to be exact, by the water, in a building that no longer exists, Bayfront Manor. In that area, my son was born in that area, and I remember shaving, looking out the bathroom window, looking at the bay because it would face the water, and I would see the pelicans dive while I would shave. I mean, it was just amazing, and I fell in love with Biscayne Bay. Biscayne Bay had a voice, had an echo that lured me to write about. I wrote a poem called Biscayne Blues back in those days. This is early 2000s, late 90s, late 2000s. Um, and about a raven-haired beauty that lived beneath the waters of Biscayne Bay that would call my name at night and give me crazy ideas. One of those ideas was to drive my car, my classic 1974 Dodge Dart, off the Rickenbacker Causeway with my bandmates and to fall in the water and meet all the beautiful nymphs that were always calling my name in the wind. Um, just to reappear on the other side, a changed person, no longer myself. And that became a music video. It's on my YouTube page,
Okay.
Biscayne Blues. At that same time, around that same time, maybe after 9/11, I lived in a. My life had changed again. I was now a single dad after that. A single dad. And I was living in a rundown building off of Biscayne and 33rd Street. And I would come home from work every afternoon and smell barbecue and and I'm like, wow, who's barbecuing every day? I realized that same building was the building where all the pimps and the Biscayne prostitutes were living, and characters for my stories, pretty much. I'm like, this is material that I can write about. How did I move here? For me, it was a blessing because I had firsthand accounts, right? And the stories that I would hear from these people that I befriended, I realized that the pimp, you might want to include this, but the pimp was a local waiter at the local Denny's down the block on Biscayne and 36 that's now being demolished. So this is an era that has faded and disappeared, right? And it's no longer there. And I write about that time, about these places and these buildings, these characters that you no longer see on Biscayne. But I was one day after work, I see a chimney outside my window. Like, what is this chimney? I leave my apartment, I go around the block, and I see, and to my shock, it says Van Orsdale Crematorium. And so the barbecue smell that I smelled across the hallways of my building was no barbecue. And the dust on my windowsill was no dust. And so that's when I started writing my series that is now titled Biscayne Inferno. A series of short stories that talk about different times in Miami, and Biscayne Inferno is like the featured story in the book, published by Jitney Books.
Shout out to Jitney.
Shout out to Jitney Books, JJ and David. These stories, run parallel with me growing up as a young adult in Miami, who had just realized that needed to pay attention. So I was paying attention to everything and writing it down, paying attention to these characters and including those in my stories. And that's what Biscayne Inferno. It's a collection of short stories and poems.
And it's history. And
it's local history. It's a noir in a noir style that I am playing with, but if you are local Miami individual, you're going to identify these places. You're going to see and connect. I talk about the 80s and the 90s in Miami. I go back to the 80s and the 90s, and all throughout. And all these are all me. All these the central character for all the stories is Oscar, like passing through with
from your eyes,
from my eyes, right?
It's important because, and I'm born and raised in Broward, so I've lived here my whole life. We've watched things change a little bit, and it's crazy that, like, I don't want to get into the to the G word, but as things change, like Wynwood, I was only started going to Wynwood in 2014, 2015, when it was still raw and underground, before, a little bit of the commercialization and what it is now. And, not for nothing, it served its purpose. For those that don't know, quick little history lesson. It was the Wynwood artists, the murals, and ultimately Art Basel turned into Miami Art Week that revitalized Miami from the post-Cocaine Cowboys era when we were on the cover of Time magazine with the title Paradise Lost, when nobody wanted to live in Miami in the 90s. And once again, subtle plug for the arts. I don't care what say this the right way. Any person is going to tell you their version of history of how Miami became a world-class city. It was not because they just built a lot of really tall buildings that were very expensive. It was the arts, and it was the artists, and it was the early stage community builders that really did have the platform for people to come together to do cool shit that I ultimately derived a lot of inspiration from. And as relates to me as a Broward community builder, I derived a lot of that inspiration, wanted to bring it back to the community, hence started Choose954, which led to Art Fort Lauderdale and now ultimately Zero Empty Spaces. For those that would like a brief history lesson, I'm going to strongly encourage the book. Also, I generally recommend people to watch Cocaine Cowboys to, see how Miami really was built, post Griselda Blanco and post, all those things. But it's good it's important to document and archive the real history from the locals' perspective, because also if we don't write the narrative and if we don't keep that narrative alive, then somebody else is going to tell you, no, this is how it happened. And yes, the commercial real estate developers who are our partners in Zero Empty Spaces, they certainly had a role in the redevelopment of Miami, and the old Miami Arena was crumbling and couldn't, withstand. And we had to have a new arena, but it really was people like yourself and so many good people back in the day.
Well, the 2000s is really super late also in the art timeline of Miami, right? I mean, early 80s. I mean, you got to talk about Cristo and Jean-Claude bringing the surrounded islands, bringing that mega public art installation surrounding the islands on Biscayne Bay with pink fabric.
That's right.
And the public library being an instrumental partner of that project, where they would test the fabric to see its buoyancy, how it would float on the rooftop of the library buildings. I mean, you want to learn a little bit of Miami history, definitely, and I'll plug this again.
Please.
Visit the Miami-Dade Public Library System.
And History Miami Museum.
And History Miami Museum, but mainly the Miami-Dade Public Library System, where you will find me, which is where my office is at the main branch. And I can give you a tour of all the art. The art is a physical evidence of the history that happened here. So, for example, the Mariel boat lift of the 80s, or the Haitian migration that happened as well. All that is documented. There were artists already here. Cristo and Jean-Claude, they put Miami in the international art map, but there was already many art galleries. There were conceptual artists creating amazing artwork in Miami.
Purvis Young.
Already. Purvis Young, Fernando Garcia. I mean, there's all these different artists that were making powerful art. So, it's just like poetry. Poetry has been happening in South Florida, in Broward, since the 70s and before that. But there's an amnesia. Like people forget, and people forget also to inquire. People forget to become little detectives. Oh, let's go and discover something old that is new all over again. And the Wynwood art time, that I knew was definitely early, like 2006, 2013. That was when I was there, and it was great. It was because the spray paint in the air, was everywhere at all time, and when Art Basel was starting to come in, Art Basel was, oh yeah, let's go check out some pretty cool art. But if you want to see some real art,
Yeah.
let's go to Wynwood,
Yeah.
where they have all these warehouse installations, and performances.
Locust projects.
Yep. And so, yeah, definitely, there's and I don't know of another city that is so intertwined with the art community as it is Miami. Miami and South Florida. I mean, there's history all over the country, right? Like for example, New Orleans has a connection to music that we don't have here.
Undoubtedly.
And you have New York also, with the graffiti art, and breakdance. But Miami's got its own story to tell, and it's a combination of all those, I want to say.
And it's important work. If they would like to find you, if they want to take you up on that offer, where's your office?
So the Miami-Dade Public Library System's main branch is in downtown Miami, 101 West Flagler Street, right across the street from History Miami, across the plaza. And you can visit both. And we have over 180 works of art on display at the main branch, but there's over 8,000 works of art in the collection that I manage. There's 50 library buildings, and every library, it's a boutique gallery space that we have created that we're featuring local artists and artists that represent the history of Miami.
One last quick plug, why it's important, why libraries are still important? For various reasons.
Yeah, I mean, but libraries are still the most democratic spaces in our communities, where conversations are, on difficult topics are still being had. There are free programming. I mean, the library affords access to amazing works of art without paying a dime. All free. You don't have to pay to enter some museums, private galleries, you have to pay. At the library, you can go in for a library card and walk away with a 16 millimeter film, or a private tour of a rare books collection. I mean, the public library is the place to be.
100%.
If you're researching history and local art.
And if you don't have a library card, it's free. Go.
Yeah.
And actually, since we were involved with the library system and Andrew was president of the board of the Circle of Friends for the Alvin Sherman Library, even there's resources like there was like grant resources for artists that they could discover through the library. Mm-hmm. There are, in certain libraries, there are rooms that are available for meeting spaces or co-working spaces. Some of the libraries have little maker spaces and 3D printers. Right. Some of them you can, whatever you film, video games, CDs, obviously books. Yeah. So there are a lot of hidden resources.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you could have your passport renewed. You can take tutoring classes. I mean, there's a lot. Libraries are not just for books.
Amen. So now that we've that was a blast down memory lane, and I appreciate that. So Miami is a city that changes fast, and sometimes beautifully and sometimes painfully. How do you see poetry helping preserve the soul of a place that's constantly being reinvented?
So,
aside from just your poetry that we already...
Yeah. Well, buildings would disappear. Cities will fade, right, and become something else. But poetry has the power of documenting an emotional landscape I was talking about earlier. Documenting what it meant to live there. Like Little Havana. I love Little Havana. What does it mean? It means cafecito. It means, even if I don't smoke cigar, it means the faint cigar smoke in the air. It means a live music happening over there in the corner. What is Kendall? Right? Also, so these memories are connected to these personal experiences. And poetry makes that connection, But a personal experience can be so intimate. and so personal that it becomes universal. So even if you've never been to Miami or Kendall or a little corner in Broward, poetry has the ability to bring you there, and to give you a taste of that of what a place can mean to someone.
It is, and poetry as an art form, I generally like to say, art can be many different things to many different people. Art could be history, art could be storytelling, art could be investment, entertainment, whatever it may be. But yeah, it's just so apparent to me from this conversation how important it is from a history perspective in a place where the landscape is continually changing. And right, the amnesia effect is real. And I think we were both put here on this planet in our own regards to help preserve the culture and the identity. And that's also why while I was a closet poet growing up, I ultimately, through attending TED Talks and gaining my inspiration and aha moments from these TED Talks, I've developed a love of storytelling. And storytelling, very similar to poetry, right, is a way to help preserve, and that's why I love these podcasts and hosting the CreativeZen, and archiving them and putting them on YouTube where they'll, be forever. So some kid, hopefully one day, person, adult, whoever, can go discover, wow, now there's all these big buildings, but no, this was how they were really built. These were the people that really built the community.
Yeah.
The people don't know about Tony Goldman. People don't, know about Purvis Young and all these other people. And I think it was super cool that I realized as I was reflecting, driving over here, that through this CreativeZen Talk series, I was just sharing with you before this, that we've now had kind of the Mount Rushmore almost of South Florida poets between Asia Sampson, Darius Daughtry, Quick the Poet, Ren the Writer, Stella, yourself, and a few others, to share their stories, not just the poetry. And you're more than welcome at the event if you want to, read something, perform something, all the better. But and we also archive these CreativeZen Talks so that they're also, if somebody wasn't able to attend and they want to get the insight and inspiration or hear more of your story, that they're available. And I also somewhat do this to inspire that next wave of generation of the next up and coming community builders and arts advocates and storytellers or historians, which unfortunately it seems like it's not exactly a path that people are taking so much like they used to. So we have to kind of keep it alive.
Yeah. Well, you talk about culture and storytelling, two things that are one and the same. The culture of storytelling is an opportunity afforded to someone through conversation. And for example, the best storytellers are the elders, right? Like the elderly, they have all these stories and all
pass them down from generations to generation.
But why don't we hear those? Because we're not engaging in conversation with them. Well, why aren't we engaging in conversation with our grandmas and grandpas, or the adult in the room? That adult in the room that's got all this information, all this wealth of history and knowledge. Because I say this in my other book titled Poetry City, that we right now we have a political Alzheimer's lurking under a dinner table, disrupting our conversations, interrupting what is important, making us forget about these conversations, about these questions to ask. If we only afford the opportunity of a conversation to our grandparents or anyone that's older, storytelling will happen. It's almost like an apparition, right? Think about it, call it, and it will appear. Same thing with storytelling. Conjure it, have that conversation, and then allow them to tell you, and then and learn from that storytelling. Learn how they talk with their hands, because that is culture. Culture, storytelling is the passed down, but remembering that, I think it's extremely important, and trying to to show up for that person, you know, and create that excuse for them to tell you a story,
Just like they used to do, sitting around the fire, not the campfire. I mean, like
the actual fire.
For fire, and that was for thousands of years. That was how, and they had not much else better to do aside from hunt, have the food, keep things going, and then pass down these stories. Now, we'll not get political, but being born Jewish, we were always told never forget about what happened back in the day. And unfortunately, we're going to leave it at that. And that's why storytelling is so important. So in closing here, CreativeZen Talks is about the story behind the person. What part of your story do you hope people see, feel, or understand more deeply after hearing you share on August the 14th?
Well, I hope people leave understanding that an artistic life does not come from extraordinary moments. It comes from the everyday, the showing up that you do for others, for yourself, that we stop to pay attention to things, and to document what we see, what we feel, what we hear, and find a way to share that with others, and show them how we do it, by showing, like we wanna show, because people learn visually, right? It's show them how we do it, so they can, and invite them to do it with you, right? And I think if people can walk away with that, like, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to pay attention. We need to document it, and we need to make time to share. Yeah,
and that's why I make this time the second Friday morning of the month. And the doors open at 8:30. The talk starts at 9. You're out of there by 10. I understand some people understandably have jobs and bosses. I have a list of truthful things that I have to share with people of why it's okay for you to tell your boss you're going to miss the first half of the morning and probably be back to work by 10:30 or maybe 11. You're gaining insight and inspiration. You're making new connections that might benefit the business, might not. But these are things that you can bring back to your team and organization. But the talk it's a free event. Everyone's welcome. Everyone's creative. It's not just for artists or entrepreneurs or yogis or startup founders or stuff like that. It's really for anybody. And then we are here in a creative space, with 40 artist studios. So people get some inspiration just from being around the art and the paintbrushes in the studios, just like you would get inspired being around the spray paint. So if they'd like to learn more about you, where can they find you on social media and the interwebs?
So my website, thebiscaynepoet.com, or at the Biscayne Poet in my social media. And I'm always available for a DM and a talk. I'm easy to find. I'm really easy to find. And I would say start thinking about poetry as an act of service, and let me be of service. Let me write your poem.
Amen. I'm truly more inspired and renewed, and I might have needed this more than I would have known or admitted to. That sometimes I've been at this now only 10 years of my arts advocacy community building journey, and with everything in life, highs and lows, and sometimes you get a little burnt out, and sometimes it's other things take priority in life, understandably. The Zero Empty Spaces program we do, has taken up the majority of my time. And obviously hosting a free community event, it is rewarding, it is fulfilling, it is important. That's why I've been keeping it going now for 8 years of hosting this event. But this conversation, for me personally and professionally, really helped put into context how important this history, passing these stories down, because I can guarantee you there's some kid that's either born and raised in Miami or that's going to move to Miami that's going to be like, how did we get here? And they're going to be searching on the internet, and lo and behold, they're going to find either Biscayne Inferno, or maybe you might find Geography of Light, or one of the other great books.
Yeah. There's a passage in the Geography of Light. If you would you like me to read it? It's this short, quick passage, and it kind of encapsulates what we talked about right now in this conversation, which is the act of showing up. And this book generally was inspired by my visits to my parents, visiting them. They live in Tampa, and driving to them, and helping my dad with his Alzheimer's, and being there for him. It's called The Living Mirror. Tomorrow, I drive through the Everglades to reach them. The long way is a necessary crossing, a stripping away of everything that isn't this. I am going to my mother's arms, which are always home. I'm going to my father's eyes, which are becoming a shoreline slowly taken by a gentle tide. Brutal, but gentle. My visit is a quiet fight against forgetting. To stand before him is to be a living mirror. See, it's me, from you, with you. To remind him of who I am is to offer back who he was. We are all driving through the wilderness to get to the other side before the light fails. To arrive in that last clear flash. To be seen, bright and unmistakable, against the closing horizon. But the road is a blade, dividing water from water, sky from sky. It pares me down to a single sharp intention: to arrive. The car is a capsule of silence, carrying only what is essential: breath and the ghost of his laugh, and the map of my mother's weariness. I cross this flat eternity to deliver myself to the small room where love persists, a geography shrunk to the space between two chairs. The miles are a meditation, a peeling back of the world's noise, until all that remains is the hum of tires on pavement and the pulse of a single quiet thought: wait for me, I am coming. This crossing is an act of faith, moving forward on a promise of a light on a distant window, on a fixed point in the softening world.
Appreciate you sharing. Appreciate you sharing a copy with me. Shout out once again, Jitney Books. Also, big shout out to
And the publisher for Geography of Light is In the Earth Books.
Shout out to In the Earth Books, Mitchell Kaplan, Books and Books, and all the great people that keep poetry, the literary arts alive.
Yes.
Grateful for you, my friend.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.